My name is Janice, and I am 60 years old, and for 9 years I knew my husband was stealing from God. I never said it out loud. Not once. I made his coffee every morning with 2 sugars, and I watched him preach about honesty on Sunday mornings, and I played the piano behind him while my hands knew what his hands had done. The day it ended, I was sitting in a Cracker Barrel booth across from a retired auditor named Mr. Pruitt, and he slid a manila folder across the table, and he asked me, very gently, if I had been part of it. I had a recording in my purse. I had been carrying it for 5 years. I am Janice Whitfield, 60 years old, and my husband Raymond has been the pastor of Beulah Hill Baptist Church in rural Georgia for 23 years. 400 members, a white clapboard sanctuary with a steeple that needed repainting since 2014. I play the piano on Sunday mornings, and I run the women's ministry on Wednesday nights, and for most of my marriage, I believed that was who I was supposed to be. I want to tell you about the boat first, because the boat is where it started for me, even though it took me years to admit that. It was the summer of 2016. Raymond came home one Thursday afternoon and told me, very casually, that a man from the congregation had given him a boat, a 19-foot bass boat with a trailer. He said the man's wife had passed and the man could not look at it anymore. I remember I was standing at the kitchen counter cutting a tomato, and I remember I did not look up. I said something like, well, that was kind of him. And Raymond kissed the top of my head and went outside to look at it in the driveway. I never asked which member. I never asked the name. I think part of me already knew there was no man. The watch came in 2017, a gold one. He said it was a gift from a pastor's conference, a recognition award. The weekend in Savannah came in 2018. He said it was a leadership retreat. The new truck came in 2020. He said the dealership had given him a discount because they were good people. I made his coffee every morning with 2 sugars. I ironed his white shirts for Sunday. I played the piano behind him while he preached about being good stewards of what the Lord provides. You have to understand. I had 3 children still at home in 2016. The oldest was finishing high school. The youngest was 8. I did not work outside the home because Raymond did not want me to. I had no money of my own except for the grocery envelope. I had nowhere to go. And in our part of Georgia, a pastor's wife does not leave her pastor husband. She just does not. The women at church would have stopped speaking to me before sundown. So I did what women like me have always done. I watched. I kept track. Not in a notebook, because he would have found a notebook. I kept track in my head, and later I kept track in receipts I tucked inside an old cookbook my mother had given me, a church and home cookbook from 1973. The spine was broken. Raymond never opened a cookbook in his life. There was a Tuesday morning in 2019 I think about often. Raymond was at the kitchen table eating eggs I had made him. He was reading something on his phone, and he laughed, and he said to me, without looking up, that I worried too much about money. He said the Lord provides. He said I needed to have more faith. I remember the eggs on his plate were cold by the time he finished talking, because he had been talking a long time, and he had not eaten while he talked. I picked up the plate, and I scraped the eggs into the trash, and I washed the plate, and I did not say anything. He went to his study to work on his sermon. The sermon that week was about Ananias and Sapphira, the couple in the book of Acts who lied about money and died for it. I sat in the front pew that Sunday and played the closing hymn and did not miss a note. In 2021, something happened that I did not understand for a long time. I came home early from a women's prayer meeting because one of the younger women had started crying, and the meeting had ended at 8 instead of 9. Raymond's truck was in the driveway, and the living room light was on, and he was on the phone in his study with the door closed. I went into the kitchen and started putting away the casserole dish I had brought home. I could hear his voice through the wall. He was talking about an account. He was talking about moving something before the end of the quarter. He was saying a name I did not recognize. He was laughing. I do not know why I did what I did next. I really do not. I took my own phone out of my purse, and I opened the voice memo app, and I set the phone on the kitchen counter near the wall, and I let it record. For 32 minutes, until I heard him say goodbye and hang up. Then I stopped the recording and I labeled it as a recipe note, and I put the phone in my apron pocket and I started washing the casserole dish. When he came out of his study, he kissed my cheek and asked how the meeting went. I told him it went fine. He said I was a good wife. I said thank you. I never listened to the recording. Not once. For 5 years, it sat in my phone, in a folder I had renamed Sunday School Notes. I was afraid of what I would hear. I was afraid of what I would have to do if I heard it. The cookbook kept filling up. Gas receipts that did not match any trip we had taken. A receipt from a jewelry store in Atlanta from a week he had told me he was visiting his mother. A booking confirmation for a hotel I had found in the trash and smoothed out and tucked between pages 84 and 85, next to a recipe for pecan pie. I want to tell you about something small now, because the small things are what I remember best. In the spring of 2022, Raymond surprised me with a necklace for our anniversary, a thin gold chain with a small cross on it. He gave it to me at the kitchen table after dinner. He said he had been thinking about how much I sacrificed for the ministry. He said I was the spine of everything he did. He clasped it around my neck himself, and his hands were warm, and for a moment I thought maybe I had been wrong about everything. Maybe the boat really had been a gift. Maybe the watch really had been an award. Maybe I had spent 6 years being a suspicious, bitter woman for no reason. I wore the necklace to church the next Sunday. A woman in the third pew complimented it. I touched it and I smiled. 3 weeks later, I found the receipt for it in his truck. He had bought it with the church credit card, the one designated for building fund expenses. I took the necklace off that night and put it in the cookbook. Page 112. Chicken and dumplings. The trigger came in September of 2025. Mr. Pruitt called the house on a Tuesday afternoon. Aldous Pruitt, 71 years old, a retired auditor from a firm in Macon, head deacon at Beulah Hill for the last 6 years. A quiet man with a white mustache who always wore a tie to Wednesday night supper. He asked me if I could meet him for coffee. He said he would prefer somewhere outside of town. He suggested the Cracker Barrel off the interstate. He asked me not to mention it to Raymond. I knew. The second he said that, I knew. I drove out there on a Thursday morning. I wore a navy blue dress and the cross necklace because I wanted to remember what it cost. Mr. Pruitt was already in a booth by the window when I got there. He had a cup of coffee in front of him and a manila folder on the seat beside him. He stood up when I came in. He waited until I was settled before he sat back down. He asked me what I wanted to drink. I said coffee. He waved the waitress over and ordered it for me. Black, no sugar. He did not assume I wanted cream. I appreciated that. He talked about the weather for a few minutes. He talked about his wife's garden. Then he put the folder on the table between us and opened it. Inside were spreadsheets, bank statements, check images, 11 years of them. He had highlighted things in yellow. He turned the folder so I could read it. He said very softly that the total was approximately $407,000. Then he looked at me, and his eyes were kind, and he asked me very gently if I had been part of it. I felt something in my chest that was not quite grief and not quite relief. I told him no. I told him I had suspected for 9 years. He nodded once, slowly, like he had been hoping I would say that. He asked me if I had anything that might help. I told him I had a cookbook full of receipts. I told him I had a recording from 2021 that I had never listened to. His coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. He set it down very carefully. He asked me if I would be willing to share those things with the denominational board. I told him yes. That night I drove home and made Raymond dinner, pork chops and green beans and mashed potatoes. He talked about the building fund all through the meal. He said we were going to need to do another capital campaign next spring. He said the Lord was going to provide. I said yes, I expect he will. Raymond did not notice anything. He never did. I went home and I listened to the recording for the first time, alone in the kitchen with the phone pressed against my ear. I heard my husband talking about wire transfers and shell accounts and a man in Atlanta who handled things. I heard him laugh about how nobody on the board would ever look close enough. I heard him say something about me. He said his wife was too simple to ask questions. He said it like it was a compliment to himself. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time after the recording ended. The cross necklace was on the table in front of me. I had taken it out of the cookbook that morning. I had not decided yet whether to put it on. I think I sat there for an hour, maybe 2. The kitchen got dark, and I did not turn on the light. The denominational board met in October. They met in a conference room at a hotel in Atlanta. I drove up by myself. I wore the navy blue dress again, but not the necklace. I left the necklace at home, in the cookbook, on page 112. I gave the board the recording and the receipts, and the bank statements I had been quietly copying for years from the joint account Raymond did not realize I had been watching. I answered their questions for 3 hours. I did not cry. I had done my crying already, in private over the kitchen sink, the way women like me have always done it. Raymond was defrocked in November. The denomination removed his ordination and recommended the matter to the district attorney. The congregation called a meeting on the second Sunday of December. I was not asked to attend, but I went anyway, because the piano was still mine until somebody told me otherwise. The deacon stood up at the front of the sanctuary. Mr. Pruitt did most of the talking. He told the congregation what had happened. He did not name me. He only said that the truth had come from inside the parsonage. The room was very quiet. A woman in the back row started crying. A man stood up and walked out. A child asked his mother what defrocked meant, and his mother shushed him. When the meeting ended, an older woman named Doris Mayhew, who had been at Beulah Hill longer than I had been alive, walked up to the piano and sat down on the bench next to me. She did not say anything for a minute. Then she put her hand over mine, and she squeezed it once, and she said she had wondered for a long time. She said a lot of them had. She said they were sorry they had not asked. I kept the piano bench. The congregation kept me. They hired a new pastor in February, a young man with a wife who teaches kindergarten. I play for him on Sunday mornings. I run the women's ministry on Wednesday nights. The boat sat in the driveway for 4 months before the bank came and took it. Raymond is living in a rental house in another town now. His trial is set for the spring. He calls me sometimes, late at night. I do not answer. The last voicemail he left, he said I had betrayed him. He said I had broken our vows. He said God was going to judge me for what I had done. I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. The cookbook is still in my kitchen. The necklace is still on page 112. I have not worn it again, and I have not thrown it away. Some mornings I take it out and look at it while my coffee is brewing. 2 sugars, the way I used to make his. I drink mine black now. I started doing that the week after he moved out, and I do not really know why. I just did. I am 60 years old, and I am still the woman who plays piano on Sunday mornings, and I am still the woman who runs the women's ministry on Wednesday nights. Most days that feels like enough. Some days, when the church is empty and I am locking up after practice, I sit on the piano bench in the dark and I think about that Tuesday morning in 2019. The cold eggs, the sermon about Ananias and Sapphira, the way I did not miss a note. I still do not miss a note. I just play for somebody else now.